Oh my god, Season 10 New World Night Haven, which is pretty much a free expansion, is looking absolutely insane. Last night we were on around about 20k concurrent just on Steam. We were kind of back, but now we are so back. We had today the dev video of New World Night Haven, the free expansion, and there's a lot of information, so let's jump in. I'll show you some footage from that, including the trailer as we go, but it might not match up because there's a lot of it and it's all over the place basically. But yes, let's talk about it. They start talking about the new zone. Well, actually first they showed off a trailer which goes through everything, but the first thing that when they get to the talking part is that they talk about the new zone. They specifically also say that they're only talking about Season 10 here. Season 11 will be obviously at some point after Season 10. The new zone looks bigger, better than anything we have seen before. The vistas are looking incredible. The vibes seem immaculate. There's a lot of little new gimmicks, new things to do, more than we've ever before seen. The mob variety as well is looking truly exceptional. It's larger than Brimstone, and there's several different tiers to this map. There is the underground catacombs, or catacombs, depending on if you're American or not. There's multi-layered castles, which are the above basically, and also the normal ground. And visually, I have to say, we'd already seen a little bit from the music video, but it looks incredible, and seeing actual characters go through it, truly impressive. What an amazing looking zone. It really does hit this sort of like realistic gothic horror vibe. I'm definitely living for it. There is actually an underwater element, which I think some people might end up being a little bit disappointed in, but I don't want to dwell on it too much. But basically, you can now go underwater, except you don't really control your up and down in the water. The game does that for you, so it like boosts you down. Well, I guess it pulls you down and then boosts you up when it's appropriate. If there's a laser, it's not like you can just swim under it. You have to like time and go through it, but it's still pretty cool to see. We hadn't seen that before in New World, so it's nice to have. In the town, by the way, it looks like it's going to be the castle, the outpost, and you're not going to be able to have a house as such because it doesn't make any sense, but you will be able to have a room in there, and the rooms are apparently a little bit bigger than they look. In the zone itself, obviously there's going to be an MSQ. You're going to go through it. They said there's going to be 4 bosses that you're going to be able to do. They're not spoiling any of that though. There's also an Arcana system, which is not the like Arcana profession, but it is basically based on the tarot cards that we did for the puzzle. Those same cards are actually in game, and I don't want to break it down into its simplistic form and say it's not that impressive, but it basically just sounds like it's going to be the way of opening chests. You're going to have to go and unlock these cards and then use them to open chests, probably on chest runs. Finding all of those cards though, they said don't check out the YouTube guides, do it yourself. Fair enough. I still might end up making that YouTube guide. It's up to you if you watch it. It is what it is. It is basically an advanced version of the glyph system. Not really sure how it will play out in game, but you know what, it looks cool. They also went through the mobs that they're going to have available and the enemy types basically. They said that there's 40 new enemy types. Now a lot of them are going to be very similar categories. For example, the Raven looks very similar to the Corvid, except this one's going to be able to fly. It'll have a slightly different personality because the 3 Werbeasts, the Werebear, the Werewolf, and the Wereraven, they all used to be human, so they have like humanistic characteristics. But there's new enemy types for the Lost, new enemy types for the Corrupted. Honestly, the enemies looked really good. Some of them like looked pretty damn cool. They had like giant shields and just all different kinds, which very pleasing to see. Honestly, when they were going through just the zone, I was like, how is this a free update? Like, this is so wild for a free update. And that's going to be a big question. I just don't know how this has transpired that we're getting this for free. New World is on the up and up, and this update is looking pretty spectacular. Obviously, it needs to deliver and be competent, like not break everything, but the new zone is looking just truly amazing. You could probably stop at the new zone, and I think a lot of people would be happy. It just looks that good. But the content doesn't stop there. There's a lot more. So the first thing that I think we'll talk about is the procedural dungeons, which is the Catacombs. I think British people say Catacombs, but not even every British person says Catacombs. The majority of the Americans and the rest of you say Catacombs, but I'm just going to say Catacombs and just get over it, okay? However, the procedural dungeons, the Catacombs, they are also looking pretty damn fantastic. What we knew about it before this was that it was going to be like this procedural game mode where 3 players are basically going to go through. You've got a time limit, you want to do bosses, then you want to extract yourself. But actually it looks so much better than that sounds, and the gameplay sounds really incredible. It's all underground, effectively in like a dungeon. It looks very similar to maybe like Elden Ring or Dark Souls in that sense, but it is very inspired, I think, by a lot of the roguelike type of games. Maybe even something like Dark and Darker. something like that. Because every time you play, it's going to be fresh. What it basically is these like blocks of rooms, and they're all connected procedurally. Now, there'll always be a path, I think, that you can actually get to the bosses. It's not like you'll just get stuck, I believe. But you're going to have to pick and choose which direction you go. Do you want to go and fight the boss now? Do you want to go and do a trash mob? Do you want to go do a parkour level? It's up to you. There's going to be puzzles and all that kinds of stuff. And you're not really going to know which is the optimal way to go. What you do know is that you have 30 minutes to decide to, you know, get as far as you can and then get out. It's all about that exploration, that problem solving, working together, the three of you, finding out which is your optimal path for you, and deciding on the fly where to go, what to do, how far you can push it. When you actually kill the first boss, what's going to happen is that the other bosses that you come across, they're going to get boosted. Now, they didn't mention a specific percentage, but everything's going to go up. Basically, it's going to get harder. I don't know if it's just the boss or the whole dungeon. I would assume the whole thing. And then you will come to these stones that will then increase your power. They said that they will just boost your health and your power by 10%. There are also basically these, I don't know what they actually call them. The names of them are escaping me right now, but let's just call them affixes. I actually think they're called aspects, just checking it now. These aspects will allow you to adapt your party to the content and the group that you have, because there's no role matchmaking. So you're going to go in, you're just going to get joined. I mean, you can join solo, but then, you know, people will join after you automatically. Now, that could happen that you maybe end up with like 2 tanks and a healer. But what you can do, apart from respecking, is these little aspects, they can make you either more tanky, more DPS, or a bit more of a healer. Somebody's actually going to be a bit more like a paladin or something like that. Literally, one of the aspects is if you do a heavy hit whilst you are below 40% health, you build a barrier that stops your team dying. Basically, it immortalizes them and it heals them. So you could effectively go from being just a DPS to a DPS who's going to keep your team alive, all whilst in the dungeon. So picking and choosing between your group is going to be very interesting to make sure you are maximizing what the three of you can do, but also making sure you don't end up getting gimped by having like 3 tanks or something like that. I think they said there's going to be 18 of those aspects, and they all look pretty damn interesting. We don't actually know the mechanic of how you push yourself. They do. I think they said there's like, they expect most people to be able to do like 1 or 2 bosses. 3, 4 might be where like the average person starts struggling a little bit. They're only expecting the hardcore to get to 6. Whether or not you can go beyond that, I sort of don't think so. Whether or not the time permits or not, I don't think it's going to be relevant. How you get out, I'm not 100% sure, and there's a variety of different currencies in there, but they did say that there are some cosmetics that you're going to want with some of those crowns that you get from that mode. And you know what? The Catacombs it's just looking so good. Yes, it's a little bit enclosed, but they can expand upon this system, and this is going to be like a key challenge where you're also going to get some of the new set bonus gear from. So that's a really interesting system. By the way, I'm sorry if my voice is a little bit weird. I've been unwell for the last week and a half, which is why I've not made any videos or anything like that, but I'm feeling ready, very excited for season 10 now. Make sure you join my Discord and make sure you watch me on Twitch. I stream pretty much every day, and if you want to just come on and watch me or get updates on the community about New World, the Discord's the place to be. It's where everybody solved that puzzle, for example. And it's where we have our guild. If you want to join us in season 10 in Nisa, everybody is welcome. We're going to be purple, but you can play along with us even if you're in a different faction. That's not a problem. Yeah, Catacombs looking pretty sick. And another new pinnacle content, if you will, where you'll also get a set bonus set of gear, is going to be the new raid, the Isle of Night. The Isle of Night, by the way, the location of it is relatively unknown, and I guess that's the same for the Catacombs. But the Isle of Night, they said, is on a mysterious island and is in a new place. A little bit interesting. It will have a similar format to Hive of Gorgon in that it's going to have 3 bosses. Sounds like there's only going to be like 1 puzzle area that's going to be a little bit random. And you're effectively going to start, let's say, on the docks, and then you have to like work your way up the tower. Visually, this looks insane. The bosses look very interesting. The mobs look interesting even more so, if that's possible. I think the first boss is that little like jester that some of us have seen before from the puzzle, but it's like a spider jester looking thing, and you know, it just looks fantastic. It'll work a little bit like Gorgon, but I'm not really sure the order. Somebody's going to correct me in the comments, but effectively maybe the first boss will be weapons, the second boss will be armor, and then the third will be jewelry, like Gorgon, except I'm not sure it's that order, so don't quote me on that. I currently don't have it written down. They did say for the difficulty, you shouldn't necessarily need specific builds. So it doesn't sound like you're going to have like a Ren bot, Blood Rapier, Evade Rapiers, and etc. It sounds like you should be able to be doing it with all different types of combos. But troublingly, for the pickup group enjoys amongst us, and maybe that's you, maybe it's not. If that is you, maybe you want to join our guild. But if it's not you, then they do say you're going to need possibly 2 shot callers. And I think what's going to happen is that the raid's going to split up, because when they were doing the Jester fight, I think you can see them like going all around the top and getting onto the cannons and stuff like that. So I think you might end up with effectively 2 small teams. If you really need a shot caller, can you do it in chat? I don't know, but worth noting nonetheless. In the raid though, you're going to see Corrupted Clerics, Flamekeeper, Wardens, Enforcers, Markswomen, and Seraph. I don't know who's the boss and who's the what have you, but you know, looking pretty good. It sounds exceptional, to be honest. I think I mentioned the MSQ. I thought they mentioned 4 MSQ bosses, but apparently that might be post MSQ. I would assume that they're soul trials. Either way, if that's either during the MSQ or after the MSQ, who knows? The MSQ is going to be very interesting though indeed. And the additional challenge of some bosses outside of the raid still sounds pretty cool. Let's quickly talk about monetization. The update is free, as you probably know. But how are they going to make any kinds of money? And that's a big question, and one I would probably could do a full video on, but I don't think I'm going to. The monetization is to basically stuff the battle pass with extra stuff so you buy it. There's going to be more cosmetics in there so that you want to get them. And importantly, there's going to be a new mount, the Fox. Now, some people don't like the image that they showed, but I'm pretty sure it's like a 3D render or like a concept art. I wouldn't get too much, I wouldn't like get too annoyed by that. I think it's going to look fantastic. Just maybe the image that they showed wasn't necessarily the best. But a Fox mount, probably on the paid pass. Most of that will be on the paid pass. They're not going to give it you to free, considering it's the only monetization pretty much. But yeah, the Fox mount looking like it might be very good. Speaking of mounts, I didn't actually mention this in the raid. In the raid, apparently there are some cosmetics. There's a hat, I think they said, from the first boss. And then from the second boss, there is a skeleton horse, basically from like World of Warcraft. If you're familiar with that, you'll know what I mean. And then the third boss has another mount, but we don't know what they are. I think they said that the drop rates were going to be like 0.5 or 0.05. Interestingly though, you can sell them. You might not want to. You might want to keep it yourself, but you can sell it. Even more interestingly, there is no raid lockout. So if you do want to farm it, you can just go in and keep farming them, get your gear sets and all that kind of jazz. No raid lockout. I will be pumping the hell out of that for the first couple of weeks. We're going to be in there all the time. And again, if you want to join the Discord, join the Twitch stream. We're going to be there every day, all day, every day. We're going to be pumping that. The next section is possibly a little bit awkward for me because they don't really show anything, but it's all about what we've spoken about before, which is going to be the umbral system, the perk charms, the set bonuses, artifacts and attributes and that kind of thing. I'll probably show you my Photoshop document in a minute, but the key thing is for umbral shards, you're going to be able to increase anything from gear score 700 to 800 using the new currency. It's basically going to work how it used to, where you just click it and upgrade, except instead of it being an item in your inventory, it's going to be a currency. The cost of upgrading though will scale exponentially, so the lower gear score it is, the cheaper it is, and as you get higher to 800, the more expensive it gets. Now they did talk about the cap, because this is going to be capped. They said basically there's a weekly limit. Now it was originally going to be 1,000, but they're thinking about changing it to 4,000. However, I don't think the number really matters that much, because the idea that they want is that they want you to be able to take 5 items in 1 week, so in 1 week's worth of the cap, from 730 to 800. You will be able to do that in a different way, like maybe if you have some 750s or 770s, maybe you'll want to take them to 800 and play around with that. Maybe able to take more items if you start off with a higher gear score, but that's the base starting point that they're working from. We don't really know if that's going to feel bad or good or anything right now, but it's interesting nonetheless. Everything that previously existed, so like old items like Frigid Dawn, getting them to 700, or the Gorgon items going to 7250, you'll still be able to do that if you want to. And that old gear will also be able to be increased in gear score as long as it is 700. You can't take a 699 to 800 unless you can do something to get it to 700, the normal upgrades. like the coconuts and that kind of jazz. Interestingly, there's no information about new materials or anything like that, and in fact one of the old materials is still going to be useful, but you should not do anything with it right now. For perk charms, when we're going to talk about them in a second, but for crafting them, the chromatic seal is going to be useful. However, don't buy it right now because it's going to get decreased in price. I think it's currently 5k, it's going to go to 2k, and it's going to be made unlimited. In fact, almost everything is being made unlimited, like the raid. You can just farm it, except umbral shards for whatever reason. Let's talk about perk charms. I was slightly wrong. However, I believe they were wrong in the way that they worded it. Basically, gem sockets are staying. In fact, let me pull up the green screen and I'll show you my old Photoshop and let me explain why some of it is wrong. So there's a couple of things to note. Basically, I suggested that this was going to happen to the old gear. We do know that attributes are just going to go off pretty much all gear apart from maybe some artifacts, but I thought the gem slot as well might also be going. The gem slot is staying. I think it might basically be a type of charm. I think it might just look very similar to that, but the gem socket is staying. Now, they didn't mention that in the video, well, in the article I should say, because in the article they said instead of a gem socket you're going to have 3 sockets, a offensive, defensive and a skill, but what they actually mean is technically 4 types of socket, a gem socket and then the other 3 that I just mentioned. So the gem socket is basically staying, okay? The attribute perks are going to get replaced, and these perks are staying in the game, by the way. These kind of perks, they're going to stay in the game. Some of them might get removed. For example, Hearty is just going. Hearty is being removed and is basically going to be baked in. Instead of having 110 stamina, you're going to have 100 stamina. But what will happen is the cost of the dodges will be brought down. So everybody who's light and medium, the cost of your dodge will be 45. And if you're heavy boy, it'll probably be 50. Something like that. They didn't actually give those numbers, but something like that. It'll be adjusted so that you have 3 dodges if you're light and medium and 2 if you're heavy. Now we need to talk about how you're going to get some of this new gear and what this is going to be like. As we expected, the skill charms are going to be your weapon charms, and then you'll have defensive and offensive ones, okay? The charms are going to be craftable using chromatics, as I mentioned, and some of the new material and a variety of different things. You will need professions for that, so professions are going to be useful. No news if professions are going to go up or anything like that. We just simply don't know. Now, there's a little bit of intrigue here. So the set bonuses, they actually gave us an example, which is weird because they said that there's one set bonuses that actually is 1, 3 and 5, and that's the one they showed. Normally it's going to be 2 and 4 or 3 and 5, but there is actually one which is 1, 3 and 5, which is basically this thing where you go berserk. You do more damage, but you take more damage. I won't explain it in detail because we don't know the exact numbers, they're subject to change, but they did show it in the video, and you know what, that kind of stuff sounds really cool. And then the slots, as I said, will be like this, but you're not going to get 4 slots very easily. So what they said is that only M3s are going to give you 4 slottable sockets. The rest of it isn't going to be 4 slottable. It might be 3 from crafting or any number for any of the raid gear and stuff like that. The raid gear, the Catacombs and the PvP track are the only ones that are going to have the set bonuses on them. And then for infix perks, they actually confirmed that there's 2 types of infix perks, if you will. There's going to be normal perks, which are going to be, let's call them old perks. They will exist, and there'll be at least 1 or 2 of them, I think, on any new gear. And then an infix perk specifically is basically, you can think of that being like an artifact perk, except it's not an artifact. It's going to be something really powerful. So one that they mentioned, and I can't remember the name of it, but I think it might have been on the chest piece. They said there's going to be an infix perk on this piece of gear that when you dodge, at the end of your dodge, you basically suck in the enemies towards you. Think of that like the Great Axe heavy attack when you've got that unlocked. So that's pretty damn cool. There's going to be infix perks, normal perks, and then charm sockets. Now, don't get hung up on the exact here because I've ruined it a little bit. But crafting, for example, you'll get 3 slottable sockets, and you might want to keep crafting until you get the 3 that you want. M3s will give you all 4 sockets, so you'll have a lot of customization, but you won't have the set bonuses. The set bonuses will come from PvP track, Catacombs, and the raid. And I think the gearing system is going to be this interplay between picking what kind of infix perks you want, what set bonuses you want, what customization you want. Like, do you want 4 perks that you can pick? Maybe that's better than having a set bonus. It's all going to revolve around that, and there's just going to be a lot of choices to make. Now, probably there'll be an optimal way, but there might be so much variety in the terms of build styles. Like, is there going to be a berserk one? Is there going to be a leeching one? Is there going to be one that keeps you more defensive? Are there going to be these kind of set bonuses, these kind of inflict perks? Basically, that choice of your build is going to determine what gear you want, and you might have to make difficult choices at times. That's going to be the key part of the game, basically, and the key part of the gearing system. As for artifacts, the only thing that they said, apart from the fact that they can go up in gear score, and the fact, I think they said stuff like the attributes will stay on them, Fortitude and the helm, but instead of having one perk that you pick as you do now, it's going to be a charm socket. Now, the type of the charm socket, I'm not really 100% sure how that will work. Some of them we actually put on the gem socket, don't we? And some of them, for example, my Venom, I put on Bleeding Sweep. I might not be able to do that if the charm socket is not a skill charm socket, but that's going to happen. I think your current artifacts, you're going to lose that perk and it's going to get replaced with the charm socket. So expect that day one. The interesting thing about attributes though is we're getting less of them. So all of your attributes are going to be baked into your character, and they did say that you weren't going to lose attributes, but psych, you are actually just going to lose attributes. Now, the number given in the video, I don't fully know if that's true, because I think the guy said it's going from 730 max to 530, and I don't know if that is the max. I'm not 100% sure what the max is there. Maybe that is the max if you have attuned leather pants and stuff like that. But he said it's going to be reduced slightly, and then it's 200 attributes, which I would not call slightly. I would very much like clarity on how much attributes we're going to have, but just know the attributes are coming down. To an amount, we're not sure. Something else interesting with weapons specifically is weapons are now going to scale off 2 attributes for every weapon. Venom's obviously not a good example here, but let's say we had a Warhammer. The Warhammer currently only scales off strength. Well, it's not going to scale just off strength. It's going to be strength and something else. That something else is yet to be told to us, and actually they're going to change some of the percentages. Now, they actually said they're going to simplify it, but the way that they're simplifying it makes it sound more complicated. So effectively it's going to be an S tier scaling if it's from 90% to 100% or something like that, and then A, and then B, and then C, and so on. They're going to change it from numbers to letters, which, if I'm honest, sounds possibly even more like confusing to me, but it is what it is. Another thing with artifacts, which I don't, again, Venom is really not a great example here. Well, let's say we have Abyss, which scales off int. Well, it only scales off int if your intelligence is higher than your strength, which when you use that weapon, normally that's the reason you're doing it, so it will be. Well, that's going to change. What's going to happen is that it will just always scale off intelligence. It's just baked into the weapon. It's not scaling, it just uses intelligence. Well, it'll be intelligence plus a second scaling because everything's going to have 2, so I'm not really sure what that will be, but basically it will, instead of using strength if your intelligence is low, it will just always scale off your intelligence plus whatever the other thing is. Same for Life Taker. Life Taker, I think, is dex instead of int and focus, but only if your dexterity is higher than your intelligence or whatever it is. Well, that's not the case. It will literally just do damage based on your dexterity no matter what, plus the second attribute, which I don't know if that'll be intelligence or what have you. It's kind of confusing. I think once we see that, it'll make a lot more sense. We're definitely going to need clarity on some things, but overall the update is looking amazing, and I mean, it's truly fantastic value New World. There's one kind of question that I still don't know the answer to, is that the update's free for everybody who owns New World Eternum, but does that include people who don't own the expansion? Like, if they boot up Steam, it looks like they've got New World Eternum, but I don't think they have New World Eternum in the way that Amazon thinks that they have New World Eternum. To them, if you have the base game but not the Rise of the Angry Earth, you don't have New World Eternum. That's just not what they say when they play the game. It does actually say New World Eternum. At this point, I've said this a couple of times, they should just give everybody who bought the base game Rise of the Angry Earth and just be done with it. It would make it a lot less confusing and probably get a lot more people back. Yeah, though, I mean, we're so back. I was joking on stream, I don't need the copium glasses. They've been discarded. I don't need the copium mask. It's gone. We are at reality here. Season 10 looking fantastic. Vibes immaculate, and yeah, there's little bits even there that a lot of interesting information that some people might not like, but overall it sounds like they cooked, it looked like they cooked, and I am very excited. Come watch me on Twitch, come join the Discord. Have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.